Patricia had set up space for her to use as a medical room. She had her own desk, a couple of chairs for the employees to use while they were with her, and an assortment of equipment for her to use: a scale, an electronic blood pressure machine, a laptop, and a supply cabinet for her to stock the basics like Band-Aids, gauze, tongue depressors, and the like. "How are you feeling?" she asked, going for casual. With every other Montgomery employee she'd met with this week, she'd been a completely pleasant professional. One glance at Christian, however, and she felt like a giddy schoolgirl. Damn the man and his incredibly good looks. And let's not forget that kiss. Yeah, she'd been trying to pretend that kissing Christian wasn't a big deal, but it totally was. If anything, she'd been playing the scene over and over in her mind since it happened. She probably could have made herself think of something else, but ever since he had proclaimed that he was looking for her help in learning to be friends with people again, they'd been spending time together. A lot of time together. Like seeing each other every day time. "You know," he said, interrupting her thoughts, "I'm feeling pretty good. I was glad to go to work on Monday, and making it a short day wasn't nearly as painful as I thought it would be." Sophie had encouraged him to work only a half day that day and was surprised that he'd listened. He sat and made himself comfortable, slouching a little in the chair and loosening his shirt cuffs. Yesterday was a little bit longer of a day, but, as I mentioned, I was more than ready to leave at 4. She nodded, because they had talked about that while they'd jogged on the beach. Yes, she'd skipped her evening surf in exchange for jogging. Hopefully, today she'd get the courage to tell him she wasn't enjoying jogging the way she enjoyed surfing. "But how are you feeling about this meeting today? Are you anxious? Stressed? Any overall negative feelings that are causing you distress?" she asked, reaching for his wrist to take his pulse. "Nope," he responded, still smiling. "I met with Aaron this morning about how I planned on delegating the workload around here, and I feel good about it. And if everyone's as on board with taking on more work as she claims, then I have to believe they'll be able to handle it." She smiled at him. "Good for you. So what are you going to do with all of your free time?" Closing his eyes, Christian chuckled. "I haven't given it much thought. I'm not even sure how much time we're talking about. All I know is that I am determined to try to make these changes by cutting my hours." Sliding the pressure cuff up his arm, she teased, "Oh, come on. You sounded a lot more confident last night while we were jogging. You mentioned taking a vacation and going to spend some time with your brother in New Orleans. What happened to that?" With her stethoscope in place, she added, "I need you to be still and relax for a moment." Then she hit the button on the electronic machine and listened to his heartbeat. When the machine beeped a minute later, she removed her stethoscope before taking the cuff from his arm. Turning, she made a note in his chart. "That's much better than the last time I checked it for you. The last time you checked my blood pressure, we thought I was having a heart attack, so—" With a light laugh, she leaned against her desk and faced him. "I'm glad it wasn't that." "You and me both." He was still seated and was looking at Sophie with mild amusement. "What are you thinking right now?" It was a question she was asking him more and more. Usually, she was making sure he wasn't thinking about work, something she knew stressed him out. But right now, she was honestly curious about what was on his mind. "Have you ever been to New Orleans?" he asked, his gaze steady on hers. "Me? No. Up until I moved here, I'd never been anywhere but Kansas." Shrugging, she crossed her arms over her middle. Never traveling wasn't something that had ever bothered her before, but for some reason, admitting it to Christian now had her feeling a little self-conscious. "I've only been there once myself," he said conversationally. "It was for Carter's restaurant opening. I flew in, ate, and pretty much flew home. He paused.